Bonke Makalala, Power, Money and Betrayal in the Taxi Industry. Introduction. The Eastern Cape of South Africa is a region marked by breathtaking landscapes and rich cultural heritage, yet it is also a battleground for power and control within its transport industry. At the heart of this tumultuous environment lies Bonke Makalala, a figure whose life embodies the stark contrasts of heroism and villainy. As a prominent taxi boss, Makalala has become synonymous with both the fierce competition that plagues local transport services and the community development initiatives that have earned him a loyal following. Since 2022, the conflict between taxi operators and long-distance bus companies, particularly in Cape, has escalated into a violent struggle for dominance on the roads. Allegations of extortion, intimidation, and even murder have clouded the reputation of Makalala and his associates, prompting serious questions about the very fabric of law and order in the region. Despite the growing evidence against him, including accusations of orchestrating brutal attacks on rival bus operators, Makalala is simultaneously regarded by many in his hometown as a benefactor and a man of the people, someone who invests in local infrastructure and takes significant steps to uplift his community. This duality creates a complex narrative that challenges simplistic notions of good and evil. The taxi industry, a critical component of the local economy, operates in a lawless environment where violence and corruption often overshadow legitimate business practices. Ordinary citizens find themselves caught in the crossfire of this ongoing battle, living in fear as they navigate the daily realities of transport safety and the pervasive influence of the so-called taxi mafia. In this video, we will delve deep into the life and controversies surrounding Bonke Makalala, examining the complicated web of power, fear, and community loyalty that defines the Eastern Cape's transport sector. Through first-hand accounts, legal battles, and the broader socio-economic context, we aim to unravel the complex identity of a man who stands at the crossroads of admiration and infamy. As we journey through this narrative, we will seek to answer the pressing question: is Bonke Makalala a self-made businessman striving to uplift his community, or is he a ruthless kingpin perpetuating a cycle of violence and intimidation? The story of Bonke Makalala is not just his own, it is a reflection of the struggles and aspirations of an entire region grappling with its identity amidst chaos. The rise of Bonke Makalala. To understand the complexities of Bonke Makalala's character and the influence he wields in the Eastern Cape, we must first explore his origins and the journey that propelled him from humble beginnings to becoming a formidable player in the region's transport industry. Born into a working-class family, Makalala's early life was marked by the economic challenges faced by many South Africans, particularly in the Eastern Cape, a province often grappling with high unemployment rates and limited opportunities. Background and early life. Growing up in a community where public transport was essential for daily survival, Makalala witnessed firsthand the struggles of people trying to navigate inadequate services. His family relied on taxis for transportation, which sparked his interest in the industry at a young age. After completing his education, he entered the workforce as a taxi driver, a role that provided him with invaluable insights into the intricacies of the transport business and the needs of passengers. Makalala's experiences on the road ignited a desire to make a difference. He saw the potential for growth in the taxi industry, particularly as demand for transport services continued to rise. However, the industry was fraught with challenges, including fierce competition, violence, and corruption. These elements would later play a significant role in shaping his strategies and ambitions. Establishing a business. By 2013, after years of saving and building relationships within the taxi community, Makalala took the leap to establish his own business, Makalala Transport. Starting with a single minibus, he quickly recognized the importance of providing reliable and safe services, which earned him the loyalty of passengers who appreciated his commitment to quality. Makalala's entrepreneurial spirit shone as he expanded his fleet, investing in additional minibuses and eventually diversifying into long-distance transport. He understood that while local taxi services were vital, there was a lucrative market for long-distance travel, particularly to and from rural areas. By 2015, his business had grown to include a fleet of over 16 taxis, alongside a couple of buses and several trucks, marking him as a significant player in the local transport scene. However, growth often invites scrutiny and competition. With success came the inevitable attention from rival operators who viewed Malala's rise as a direct threat to their dominance. This competitive landscape was not just about business, it was about survival in an industry characterized by an unspoken code of conduct that often involved intimidation and violence. The taxi industry in the Eastern Cape. Understanding Bon Malala's journey requires a deep dive into the taxi industry itself, a sector that plays a crucial role in the socio-economic fabric of the Eastern Cape. It is an industry defined by its complexities, one that operates outside the bounds of formal regulation and is frequently marked by violent rivalries among operators. Structure and dynamics. The Eastern Cape's taxi industry is made up of various associations and factions, each vying for control over lucrative routes. These associations often operate independently and can be characterized by their territorial disputes, leading to fierce competition that sometimes turns deadly. Taxis are the primary mode of transport for many individuals, especially in areas where bus services are limited or non-existent. The economic importance of taxis cannot be overstated. They provide essential services in both urban and rural settings, connecting communities with job opportunities, education, and healthcare. However, this significance has also attracted criminal elements, leading to a culture where violence and extortion have become unfortunate byproducts of competition. Violence and intimidation. The taxi industry's reputation for violence is well documented. Rivalries often escalate into brutal confrontations, with operators resorting to intimidation tactics to assert their dominance. Incidents of stone throwing, assaults, and even shootings have been reported, creating an atmosphere of fear among drivers and passengers alike. For many people in the Eastern Cape, the experience of using a taxi is fraught with anxiety. Drivers may face harassment from rival operators, while passengers are left to navigate the dangers of a transport system that operates outside the law. The lack of effective oversight from authorities has allowed this culture of violence to fester, with police often reluctant to intervene in what they perceive as a taxi matter. In this unpredictable environment, Bon Malala emerged as a key figure, navigating the treacherous waters of the taxi industry with strategic acumen. His rise to power was not just a reflection of his business savvy but also of his ability to manage the complex relationships and rivalries that defined the industry. Yet, as he ascended to prominence, the lines between legitimate business practices and criminal activities began to blur, setting the stage for the conflicts that would follow. The battle for dominance. As Bon Malala solidified his position within the taxi industry, the competition intensified, particularly with long-distance bus operators like Intercape. This chapter explores the fierce battle for control over transport routes, revealing the strategies employed by Malala and his rivals to assert their dominance. Conflict with Intercape. The conflict between taxi operators and bus companies reached a boiling point in 2021 when taxi operators, including Malala, began to target Intercape buses. As the preferred choice for long-distance travel, buses represented a significant threat to the taxi industry's profits, prompting desperate measures from taxi bosses eager to maintain their market share. Malala and his associates demanded that Intercape alter its operations, including raising ticket prices and limiting the number of buses on specific routes. When these demands were rebuffed, violence erupted. Reports of attacks on Intercape buses became increasingly common, with instances of vandalism, stone throwing, and physical assaults on drivers and passengers. This violent campaign was not merely about business, it was a calculated effort to instill fear and assert control over the transport landscape. Taxi operators believed they were justified in their actions, viewing the bus company as an interloper encroaching on their territory. For Malala, the stakes were high. Maintaining control over routes meant safeguarding his business and the livelihoods of those who depended on him. Extortion and criminal activity. Amidst this conflict, allegations of extortion surfaced. Taxi operators allegedly approached Intercape with demands for payments in exchange for protection from violence. This practice, which is not uncommon in the taxi industry, highlighted the blurred lines between legitimate business operations and criminal activity. The pressure to comply with such demands placed Intercape in a difficult position, forcing the company to weigh the safety of its drivers and passengers against the financial implications of yielding to extortion. As the violence escalated, the community became increasingly concerned about the safety of public transport. Ordinary citizens lived in fear, knowing that the repercussions of defying taxi operators could be severe. Reports of private vehicles being seized and owners extorted for hefty sums further underscored the lawlessness that permeated the industry. This chaotic environment not only affected the transport sector but also strained community relations, as residents found themselves caught between conflicting interests. The role of law enforcement. The intersection of crime and transport in the Eastern Cape raises critical questions about the effectiveness and integrity of law enforcement. This chapter delves into the relationship between the police and the taxi industry, examining allegations of corruption and complicity that have allowed violence to flourish unchecked. Police corruption. The allegations of police corruption within the Eastern Cape's transport sector have become a focal point of public discourse. Reports suggest that some police officers have been complicit in the activities of taxi operators, either through bribery or a reluctance to engage with the violent realities of the industry. This complicity has created an atmosphere of impunity, where taxi operators feel emboldened to act without fear of legal repercussions. Intercape's attempts to seek assistance from law enforcement often met with indifference, as police cited a lack of evidence linking the violence to specific taxi operators. Such responses raised suspicions among the bus company and the community, leading to allegations that the police were either unwilling or unable to do their jobs effectively. As the violence escalated, the perception grew that law enforcement agencies were either overwhelmed or compromised, which only fueled the cycle of fear and violence. Impact on the community. The failure of law enforcement to act decisively in the face of taxi-related violence has had dire consequences for the community. Ordinary citizens, who rely on taxis for transportation, find themselves caught in a precarious situation. Many drivers are afraid to pick up passengers who may be perceived as competing with taxi operators, leading to a culture of fear that permeates everyday life. The community's frustration with the lack of police intervention has led to calls for reform and accountability. Residents are increasingly vocal about their desire for a safer transport environment, one where they can travel without fear of violence or extortion. This desire for change reflects a broader yearning for stability and security, elements that have been sorely lacking in the Eastern Cape's transport landscape. Bonke Makalala's arrest. In a dramatic turn of events, Bonke Makalala's reign as a prominent taxi boss faced a significant challenge when he was arrested amid a growing tide of accusations and legal battles. This chapter examines the circumstances surrounding his arrest, the public response, and the implications for the ongoing conflict in the taxi industry. Circumstances of his arrest. By late 2022, the mounting evidence against Makalala had reached a tipping point. He was apprehended on multiple charges, including homicide, attempted murder, and illegal possession of firearms. The arrest came after a joint operation involving specialized police units targeted him as a key figure in orchestrating violence against Intercape and other rivals. The public reaction to Makalala's arrest was mixed. While some celebrated the move as a long-overdue step toward accountability, others questioned the motivation behind the arrest. Many in his hometown viewed him as a community leader who had made significant contributions to local infrastructure and development. This perception complicated the narrative, as it painted Makalala not only as a criminal but also as a benefactor. Legal proceedings. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the courtroom became a focal point for the ongoing battle between the taxi industry and law enforcement. Makalala's legal team mounted a defense, arguing that the charges against him were politically motivated and lacked sufficient evidence. Meanwhile, the prosecution painted a picture of a man who had used violence and intimidation to maintain control over his territory. The case drew significant media attention, highlighting the complexities of the taxi industry and the broader issues of power, corruption, and community dynamics. As legal battles ensued, the community remained divided, with some calling for justice while others rallied behind Malala, viewing him as a scapegoat for a system plagued by deeper issues. Community perceptions of Bonke Makalala. The duality of Bonke Makalala's image, hero to some and villain to others, reflects the complexities of his role within the Eastern Cape community. This chapter explores the various perceptions held by residents and the impact of Makalala's actions on local sentiment. Hero or villain? In his hometown, Makalala is often celebrated as a hero, a self-made businessman who has uplifted his community. His efforts to repair neglected infrastructure, such as fixing roads and bridges, have earned him admiration from many residents who view him as a champion of development. These community-driven projects have fostered a sense of loyalty among locals, who appreciate the tangible improvements he has brought to their lives. However, this admiration exists alongside a recognition of the darker aspects of his influence. Many residents are aware of the allegations surrounding his involvement in violence and extortion. This awareness creates a complex relationship, where admiration for his contributions is tempered by fear of the repercussions of crossing him or his associates. Community projects. Makalala's commitment to community development has played a significant role in shaping public perception. His initiatives to improve local infrastructure have provided much-needed services to residents, many of whom have felt neglected by the government. These projects not only enhance the quality of life but also foster a sense of community pride. His approach to community engagement has allowed him to cultivate a loyal following, with many locals viewing him as a leader who genuinely cares about their well-being. However, this loyalty raises questions about the extent to which his criminal activities overshadow his contributions. Can a person be both a benefactor and a perpetrator of violence? This contradiction complicates the narrative surrounding Makalala, making it challenging for the community to reconcile their admiration with the darker aspects of his legacy. The future of transport in the Eastern Cape. As the battle for control within the Eastern Cape's transport industry continues, the future remains uncertain. This section explores the ongoing violence, the potential for reform, and the community's hopes for a safer transport environment. Ongoing violence and regulation. Despite Makalala's arrest, the violence in the taxi industry shows no signs of abating. Rivalries persist, and the culture of intimidation continues to plague the transport sector. The lack of effective regulation allows taxi operators to operate with impunity, leading to ongoing confrontations and chaos on the roads. Calls for reform have grown louder, with community leaders advocating for stricter oversight of the taxi industry. Many argue that without proper regulation and accountability, the cycle of violence and corruption will persist, further endangering the lives of residents who rely on these services. The community's hope for change. Amid the turmoil, there remains a glimmer of hope for the community. Residents are increasingly vocal about their desire for a safer transport environment, one where they can travel freely without fear of violence or extortion. Grassroots efforts are emerging, with community members advocating for dialogue between rival operators and the establishment of a safer, more regulated transport system. The potential for change lies in the community's collective will to demand accountability and reform. By uniting in their efforts, residents can work toward a vision of a transport system that prioritizes safety, reliability, and respect for the rule of law. In conclusion, the story of Bonke Makalala is an insignificant of the broader issues facing the Eastern Cape's transport industry. His journey from humble beginnings to a controversial taxi boss summarizes the complexities of power, loyalty, and community dynamics. As the region contends with violence, corruption, and the struggle for dominance, the question remains, can the Eastern Cape's transport sector evolve into a safer, more regulated environment, and what role will figure like Makalala play in shaping that future? The tale is far from over, and as the community continues to navigate the challenges ahead, the legacy of Bonke Makalala, both as a businessman and a symbol of the taxi industry's riotous history, will undoubtedly continue to influence the path of transport in the Eastern Cape for years to come. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the duality of Bonke Makalala's image, Hero to some and villain to others. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. See you in the next video.